It was a real lonely feeling. There, a few minutes after 10 o'clock, when we would lock the doors to the lobby, nobody else could get in, and just about everybody had bought their drinks and their popcorn and had gone into their respective theaters, and I was there in this lobby that had once, just a few minutes ago, had been full of like life and talking and laughing and excitement, and now I was there to clean up after everybody. And the only other sign of life was in the box office, and it was the sound of the gate coming down on the speaker and that little hole in the glass window where Edward, who had been manning the box office that night, had taken everyone's money. He was shutting things down, and normally when it was slow, he would sit in there and he would read his Bible, and he was a preacher on Sunday, so I guess he just worked here as something of a side hustle, or maybe preaching was a side hustle. I don't know. I never asked him. But on Friday nights, it was too busy for him to read his Bible, but he was still bringing anyway, so I could hear him there across the lobby. It was only about 10 feet or so, but it felt like a mile away, but it was like just everything he did was echoing through the space. And the door opened, and I could see Edward coming out. He was taking his Bible, and he was like shoving it into his backpack, his little JanSport bag that he brought with him. And he threw up his big hand to me. He's like, "See you later, Mike." "All right, see you, Edward." And then he left. And now it was just me, and I was looking outside the big windowed front of the movie theater, and I could see him getting into his car and just turning on the lights and the engine, the windows coming down, and then gospel music blasting out of his Tercel as he peeled out into the night. And there I was, just standing there at the snack bar. This gargantuan task I had ahead of me. And I wasn't alone. I had other people there with me, but I was the youngest one. This was my first job. It was at the Dollar Theater. And I just turned 16 a couple months earlier. And so naturally they had me slated to do all of the dirty work, and I was there, and I guess it was time to get to it, because it was now officially a few minutes after 10 o'clock on a Friday night there in 1999. A race against time. Yeah, so you had to do all these tasks. You had to, of course, clean all the popcorn out of the bin, out of the two bins, right? Clean all the popcorn out, scrub it down. You had to do the same thing with the soda fountain. Get all that like suicide mixture of all the major sodas out of there, out of that tray. Wash it down. Of course, you had to like mop up the kitchen, getting all that just gunk all over your shoes and your shirt and in your hair. You knew you were going to have to take a shower when you got home. And taking just that shirt off like that. They made you wear like this tuxedo, right? The Carmike Cinemas, this sort of red velvet. I don't know what it was. It was some kind of like imitation faux leather vest and cummerbund. No, it was a bow tie. It was a bow tie, right? That you had. It was like a little thing that you slipped in your collar, and you wouldn't tie it or anything. You would just sort of tighten it. And that like cheap $2 shirt that you got from like JCPenney or whatever just was covered and reeked in butter substance, whatever it was. And it was all sticky. You were just sticky It's just the grossest feeling, and you would just be aware of this, and but it didn't matter at all, because as you were doing all of it, you would look up there at the clock and it would be like 10:15, right? And then you would go and do another task. You would come back, look at that clock again. It was like 10:40, and like, oh my god, at this point, what else is there left to do, right? And you would have to play these like cool negotiation games with like the older guys that worked there. They were only like a few they were only a few months, maybe a couple years older than I was. They, some of them even went to the same high school I did. But of course, like when you're 16, somebody who's like 17 feels like they're an elder that you could go to for consultation and advice, and possibly maybe even expect them to be like a little bit more rational than somebody who's younger than you. But yeah, they are rational. They're rational in their idea that they have a power hold on you, that they, have seniority. This is the first time that I've had heard that word really working at the Dollar Theater, was seniority. The people who are there longer don't have to do the more disgusting tasks like do bathroom checks, right? But I learned how to do a bathroom check, a very scientific method, from the elder 17 and 18-year-olds that worked there, and even from Edward, who, as being much older than all of us, being 65 years old, as well as having the moral high ground of being like a Sunday morning preacher, taught me a very efficient, very scientific, and I suppose even moral way of doing a bathroom check, which is just to walk in the bathroom, be like, it's okay, and then signing your name on the little slip, and then heading out. So I did that, and then I came back, I looked at the clock, 10:50. Okay, I've got 10 minutes. I got 10 minutes, right? So I can get in there. Okay, so go out to the car, lock everything up. Oh, I forgot to clock out. That's okay, I'll do it in the morning when I get back here at 9 o'clock to meet the truck with all the film cans for the new movies that we were going to show that week. So I would race out to the parking lot, get in the minivan, the Plymouth Voyager, that was my mom's car, but I didn't have a car yet. That's what I was driving. And yeah, get in that thing, and I don't remember what kind of music I was listening to. I didn't really care about the music, right? The whole point was to race to the video store before it closed at 11, which now was 9 minutes away. And it's not like I had a GPS or anything like that in front of me telling me that it was really like 13 or 14 minutes away. I can make it, right? So peeling out just as Edward did, whatever music I was listening to at the time, even though I wasn't really paying attention, was, I'm sure, blasting out of the windows of my car as I sped through the humid night, and just down over the bridges and over the mountains of the suburbs, and then finally getting to the video store and running in, and I had just made it. Well, technically, I really hadn't just made it, actually. It was like, by this time, about 11:05. But no wonder the woman, the very helpful clerk, the much older clerk, who, looking back all these years later, I think she just like maybe thought of me as a son or something, or she was just happy to have somebody in there to break the silence, or somebody to just talk to her. Because yeah, like me, I was also she was also just like a person who was like alone in her job, and she really didn't have anybody else to be there with her. She was the closing shift at the video store on a Friday night, and she was just glad to have the night over, and also glad to just have somebody in there also who was a fellow movie lover, I think, a fellow somebody to just, and she did indeed like keep the place open for me, because about an hour ago, when I had said goodbye to Edward and I faced the task of cleaning the movie theater lobby, I had used the phone. I had called her up. And she's like, is this Mike? I'm like, yeah, it's Mike. Can you keep it open for me? And she's like, yeah, I'll keep it open for you. When you think you're going to be in here? Well, I'm getting started now, so like maybe 10 minutes after 11. She's like, okay, I got it. So there you go. And there it is. She had the store locked, and I had the place to myself, and she was totally cool to just close up the store, balance out the cash register for the night while I was looking for a new movie to take home with me. And this was the deal we had made. And I don't think I ever got her name, and I feel terrible. I want to say maybe it was like Christy or Chrissy, but this was like what it was like for about 2 or 3 years or so. A few months earlier, before that night, and I don't know which night it was, this was every Friday night for about 6 months while I worked at the Dollar Theater, but when I first started working there, I was really disappointed one night when I had missed my window. I had missed my chance to get to the video store on a Friday night. That had just become my tradition. For about a year now or so, is just going there every Friday night to the video store and taking advantage of this deal they had where you could you had $6, you could rent 5 movies. It was really 5 for 5, but with tax and everything. But you couldn't rent any of the new releases, which, sucked at first, but at the same time, it was kind of cool because now you were suddenly discovering all of these old movies in the video store that were not on the new release counter and that were always in stock because nobody ever wanted the old movies. They wanted the new stuff. And so over that year or so, from the time I was about 15, to several years later when video stores stopped becoming a thing, I was just renting 5 movies every week. Usually one from each genre, horror, action, and always a couple of classics, right? Always some movies that were made a long time before I was born, just to get caught up on how we got here to this present state of cinema. And I had always done that every Friday night. And then, of course, one night, right after I got my new job at the Dollar Theater, I realized that I had missed my window. Now it was going to be really tough to get there by closing. And I couldn't do it before I went to work because I would have to go, the schedule was so tight, I would have to go straight from school to the movie theater to work. And, so one night was in there, it was like a Saturday night, and I said to Christy, God, I hate this so much that I can't come in on Friday nights anymore. And she's like, well, why is that? And I told her the reason why, and she said, well, why don't you just call me if you're running late, and I'll keep the store open for you. So I did. And she started doing that, and it just became this thing now, where I would close up the store and then I would go into the movie gallery and I would be stinking of butter and everything, and I would just be picking out movies and she would be suggesting movies to me, and I would usually stay there until about 11:30 or maybe even midnight just talking to her about her movies. Sometimes she had her kid there and we would all talk, and it was just this nice little kind of late night society for a while there, and then I would take the movies home with me. And yeah, I just discovered so many great things, and this is what I thought about this week. This is the first thing I thought about when I learned that the actor Val Kilmer had died. So I thought about all those late nights hanging out in the movie gallery with Christy and maybe her kid, and just talking about all these movies that I hadn't seen that I was just now discovering. And she's like, "Oh, well, have you seen Real Genius? You got to see that, right? It's got this guy in it, Val Kilmer." I was like, "Oh yeah, no, he was kind of stupid as Batman." She's like, no, you got to see, these movies like Real Genius, for instance, like pretty much every movie I think that Val Kilmer ever made. I was alive when he made them, but I was very young. I was like 3 or 4 years old when Real Genius came out, right? But I discovered that movie thanks to Christy. And yeah, I would walk around and just like other movies. And then I, of course, landed on The Doors, right? The Doors, which was probably, what I was thinking about this week was the movie he was probably best in, I think. He played Jim Morrison, right? And I think when I watched The Doors, I never really listened. Of course, I knew some songs by the Doors, right? I knew some songs, like Light My Fire and all that. But I mean, that movie, his performance just brought that role alive, of Jim Morrison, the Lizard King, which, looking back on it now, it's obviously really, kind of silly and pretentious for a guy to call himself the Lizard King and for people to venerate him as such. But, nevertheless, I guess if you're the first to do something that's pretentious, it's not really pretentious, I suppose. I don't know. I mean, it's like, it's just when you emulate him, right? Which does not make Val Kilmer, pretentious. It just makes him a great actor for playing Jim Morrison and just doing so in a way that, I think that the great thing that was about that performance was that he was not necessarily making Jim Morrison out to be some kind of a god who knew what he was doing at all times, and he was like imbued with this Indian spirit, this shaman that manifested in him and spoke wise words out to the crowd. I mean, I think Val Kilmer played him as a drug addict and a drunk and a guy who was very narcissistic and threw his bandmates under the bus quite a lot. It was a very real performance, right? That movie is directed by Oliver Stone, so yeah. But wonderful actor passed away this week, Val Kilmer, and that's the first thing right I thought about, because I never knew Val Kilmer in person. I don't really have any personal stories about him, the way that you might communicate to people when somebody dies. I just have the memories of discovering him and all of his movies, and I'm very sad. So I'm gonna drink a little bit of a toast. I know it's a little bit early in the show right now to drink whiskey. I usually do that toward the end of the show, and I usually toast to dead celebrities toward the end of the show. That's what I did with Gene Hackman a couple weeks ago, but normally I start with coffee and then I end with whiskey. But I tell you what, I'm gonna do this special occasion. Was Val Kilmer Irish? I don't know, but I'm gonna do that, do a little Irish coffee there, and drink a bit of a toast, yes, to Mr. Val Kilmer, and we'll do that. Yeah. It's been a while since I've done that. And welcome to the Midnight Citizen Show. Here, the first show of April of 2025. And I wish it was a fool that Val Kilmer's passed away. It's interesting. Obviously, that's a big loss. Another big loss this year is Gene Hackman. I think the world would have been talking about Gene Hackman just as much had he died normally as a 95-year-old man, but obviously there was a lot of great mystery wrapped up in his passing, and that he died with his wife, and obviously there was a lot of speculation at first, but and I don't want to get into all of that, but Gene Hackman and Val Kilmer, it's interesting that they did pass at the same time, because they are two actors that were absolutely ubiquitous in filmmaking, right? They were very well known. They were constantly in movies, constantly acting, and known for being very good actors, not just celebrities, the way that a lot of actors end up, being, that just, right, like kind of dabble in the acting game, but they're really just celebrities, right? But I think Val Kilmer and Gene Hackman were just these two ubiquitous presences in movies. And what's interesting about them is that at some time, kind of around the same time, they just stopped. They just, Gene Hackman retired in 2004, and then Val Kilmer was in movies a little bit after that, but then of course he got very sick and survived cancer, and then died this week of pneumonia, very tragically. Just the way that I think a lot of people who go through that kind of illness and that kind of recovery do, that they end up, mortgaging their bodies. A lot of their immune system, a lot of things that make them healthy, they have to give up in order to survive such traumatic diagnoses as cancer. And so, I did see when that movie came out, there was a documentary that came out a couple years ago called Val, right, which is all about Val Kilmer's life, and they were able to make it because Val Kilmer had spent pretty much the better portion of his career filming everything with his, on videotape with his handheld consumer grade camera. And it's so interesting to watch that movie and just see him be on the sets for all these films that have become, classics, like him going and just hanging out with all the guys, Tom Cruise and Anthony Edwards and, Kelly McGillis and Top Gun. And then he's there on the set of Tombstone. And that's a very interesting, very fascinating documentary if you haven't seen it. Val. It is a good celebration of Val Kilmer's life, but it's also just a really interesting fly on the wall peek of all these movies that just have become these cultural touchstones of the 20th and 21st centuries, right? But yeah, when you watch that movie, Val, he is not doing very well at all. Val Kilmer can barely talk. If you saw him, the last movie he was in was Top Gun Maverick a couple of years ago. And when you watch that movie, of course, they have to write his illness, his inability to really speak into the film. He's not like it's not like he's shooting down jets and playing volleyball on the beach in that movie. No, it's not that at all. It's Tom Cruise's character goes to see him. He's like this retired admiral, and he's living on this nice, in this nice house that's overlooking the ocean. And, Tom Cruise does all the talking in the scene, but they have a very heartfelt, hug. But yeah. And I'm sure this came as a surprise to a lot of people who watched that movie, Top Gun Maverick. But anybody who'd seen Val, which I think had come out just before that movie, were not surprised, I suppose, at all to see him in such bad shape, right? And or to find out that he did pass away this week. And I really was surprised that he had held on right that long. But yeah, you watch that movie, and he is I because of the treatments that he went through to survive cancer, I suppose that took a great deal on his ability to speak and his ability to get it out. But he was a chronic cigarette smoker for many years, and I think one of the things that just really got to me, I think, about that movie was and just seeing him in that state of not being able to talk and basically still trying to have that kind of Val Kilmer, personality, that sunshiny, positive personality. I think that he was known for, even though by all accounts he was a very challenging person to work for. And there are a lot of stories that have been communicated about him over the years that he was he was pretty much an asshole a lot of the times. And this is not a fun story at all, but bringing it back to cigarettes, when he went through a divorce in the middle of shooting a really terrible movie in the 90s called The Island of Dr. Moreau. And he had, I believe the story is that the divorce papers were served to him while he was on set filming at some godforsaken island in the middle of the Pacific. So the fact that the movie was already not going very well, that it was over budget, that they were firing directors and hiring new directors, and Marlon Brando wouldn't come out of his hut or Val Kilmer was in a very bad mood. So he would just sit there and he would refused to work also, and then he would also like sit behind people like in his chair, and he would like take his burning cigarette, he would like put it up against their neck and almost like sort of micro torture them with it. So that's not very nice, right? But I do think when I watched that movie, seeing a little piece of Val Kilmer resemble something of my grandfather, not saying that like Val Kilmer was all that, but like growing up, my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, my dad's dad, I never heard his real voice because he was a chronic cigarette smoker as well, but you could tell that he had, when he did have his voice, he had a big personality that he loved to talk. And he was a drill instructor, I'm told, during, Vietnam, but he was a prisoner of war. So he had all these great stories, and he got surgery to remove it, like in 1982, the year I was born. He had surgery, he had a laryngectomy. So growing up, the only voice I ever heard from him was him talking through a voice box like that, a robot voice, which was intimidating, of course, growing up and coming to realize that everybody around you is talking one way, like using their vocal cords, but he's not. And so this is kind of strange, and just having to build a relationship with somebody like that. And it automatically makes it very difficult to see them as like an average normal human. And I'm sure it probably killed my grandfather, because he died really before I got a chance. I matured well enough to be able to talk to him about it. To sit there and not be able to tell us with his own voice all these stories about what it was like to be a prisoner of war and what it was like to win the Purple Heart twice and raise my dad, right? And the way that he would compensate for it was he would just use these like big gestures with his hands and everything, and really trying to overcompensate for not being able to tell us with his own voice. And so I saw that in the Val Kilmer documentary, the way that Val Kilmer is like at fan conventions, and he's, greeting fans, and they're doing all the talking, and you could just tell Val Kilmer is just frustrated that he's not able to like talk back to them. And, but he's, overcompensating it by using these big gestures, by like yanking a poster out of somebody's hand and signing it really quickly. And it's like, here, take it, and giving it back to him. And so, that's something I took from that documentary, just like the kind of pain that he must have been going through, during that whole time. But, anyway, but yeah, I just wanted to open the show this week by doing like a quick, kind of, tribute to him, I guess. Thank you, maybe, for Val Kilmer, right? Again, just like an actor that you saw all the time in movies, and then just at one point he just he stopped doing it because I suppose he got sick. But the last great movie I think I saw him in was probably Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, that I suppose neo-noir, film noir detective story he did with Robert Downey Jr. Which I definitely highly, recommend checking out. Yeah, just looking at some other Val Kilmer movies. So yeah, Jim Morrison and the Doors. He was great in that. And Tombstone, I've never been a gigantic fan of Tombstone, I have to admit. It's a good movie. I remember watching that last year when I had COVID. That was a movie that I watched when I had COVID. And still just being like, yeah, it's a pretty good movie. It's a good Western. I'd rather watch like Unforgiven or The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly or something. I don't know. But he was in True Romance. I don't remember him in that movie. True Romance is one of those movies that has like everybody in it. and people you don't even recognize. One of my favorite movies, Heat. Remember, he's in Heat. Plays like the troubled, gambling addicted bank robber who has like just one of the great romantic lines, right? He's talking about his wife, Ashley Judd, who's about to leave him. And he says, like, to me, the sun rises and sets with her. It's so good. Yeah. But, and one thing I think that they also covered in the Val Kilmer documentary is that he was preparing a play. He had been working for years on a play, on a one-man show of Mark Twain, which is interesting because, Mark Twain for years had been played on Broadway and also in touring. And I actually saw him live here in Birmingham when he brought the show through Birmingham by the actor Hal Holbrook. Did Mark Twain Tonight. It was just a whole show that was meant to imitate the lectures that Mark Twain used to travel across the country giving in like the last couple of decades of his life. And Mark Twain is often called like the first stand-up comedian, right? Because they would just be jokes he would be telling and all that. So, but yeah, Val Kilmer was apparently working on a play of Mark Twain, and again, that just must have killed him, right? That he couldn't do that. That he lost his voice, his ability to do it. But yeah. So anyway, Val Kilmer, yeah. Other movies he was in. He was in Francis Ford Coppola's movie that he made before Megalopolis, which was, if it's possible, an even bigger flop than Megalopolis. And I still haven't seen that movie yet, and I want to. I really do. I've been wanting to see Megalopolis for years, ever since I found out about it like 20 years ago that Coppola was working on it. That was one of those movies that I discovered, right, during one of those late night video store having it to myself nights, right? Is just being able to check out The Godfather for the first time, just finding The Godfather, and then The Conversation, and then of course Apocalypse Now, and just falling in love with Francis Ford Coppola and just being like, what's he done lately? Right. Dracula was pretty good, right? But yeah, Francis Ford Coppola though fell into I guess maintaining wineries, but Val Kilmer was in this movie called Twixt, which, that was a movie that came out at some point, but he wasn't that. So yeah, it says here he attended Chatsworth High School at the same time as Kevin Spacey, so he was there with Kevin Spacey, and then of course he went to Juilliard, and I believe he was at Juilliard with Kelly McGillis, right? Yeah, who he was in, of course, Top Gun with, right? Yeah, Top Gun. Say this is the night. It's a little humid here in the Midnight Citizen studio. I gotta say, I don't know what it is. It's like my biology has changed just from living here in this. I'm not gonna say change or evolved or whatever. I mean, I've always lived here in the South, but somehow 42 years into it, this is my 42nd summer in the South, still forgetting how freaking hot and humid it can get here, especially at night. And it's so weird. I don't really even notice. I was driving around today, just in the car, driving around town, delivering food from place to place, and just probably in the car, for about 2.5 hours though. There, when I realized suddenly, like, oh my God, it's like It's like, what is this I'm feeling right now? This is strange, because it's kind of been like the weather's been oddly chill for the last few months, right? Winter here in the South comes and goes, right, in the blink of an eye, and then suddenly it's spring, and then very quickly it's summer, right? But spring has lasted. It's been like a pretty normal spring so far, I have to say. It has not been that hot outside, and in the mornings you're still kind of wearing your jackets. But yeah, today I was like driving around. I was like, why is my shirt sticking to me right now? This is odd, right? I turned on the AC for a little bit, and then about an hour or so after that, I said, like, my shirt is still, it's like I reached down and my AC was not set to like the proper setting or whatever. And I hadn't even noticed. It was just bizarre. I just kind of live like this. And then I finally, like, I hit like one button, right? Just as I'm doing now here in the studio, because I just now realized in that transition that, like, my God, why is it so weirdly humid here? It's not supposed to feel that way in the Midnight Citizen studio. So I just, turned it on. It's like, oh my God, that feels good. Yeah. Yeah, but it is, I suppose. I mean, I say that spring has been like going pretty well. I guess technically we've only been in spring for like the first, I mean, I guess the regular world, like all you guys out there who are not down here, have been only having spring now, I guess officially for like the last week or so, right? But yeah, I've been thinking about spring as being like, we're now in the second month of spring. We're winding down on spring, right? And now it's kind of coming into summer, right? But and then I was seeing weirdly that the way that you do know that we're in spring is that you look on the weather is quite unpredictable. You look on the forecast there on the morning news, and you see that like today the high is going to be like 90, and with a heat advisory, and then Monday it's going to be like 30 degrees in the morning, and it's going to be like it's only getting up to like 50 or whatever. So the weather person like there is like saying like, make sure you take a jacket and some gloves, some mittens, right? But yeah, it's making people very happy though. I was like, just going out there earlier tonight, walking the dog down the alley, and you just hear people turning on their grills. You hear, burgers sizzling. You smell that. People outside in the backyard smoking cigars, right? Just, the adamant backyard conversations, women sitting around sipping wine on their girls' nights, talking about that bitch in the office. I heard this conversation earlier tonight. Just backyard gossip, right? It was sounded like a scene from like the White Lotus or something that I was stepping into, I think. Yeah. One of these things that, just people, office gossip, definitely do not miss that at all. And it has been strange because I'm going on now. Oh, man. Yeah, 3 years now of pretty much being out of that kind of environment where office can fester. That environment that you get when you take more than, 3 or more people and make them share like a common space for like the entire week, and then it goes into the month, and then it's like on to the rest of their lives. I've been out of that environment for so long, right? It's like that was 3 years ago that I left my job teaching high school. And it was a relatively cool environment, but nevertheless, you did have, you had like 50 people working under one roof. It was a very small roof too, so office was bound to gossip, right? Office gossip was bound to happen. And it's just one of those things that I have not missed in the last 3 years. The last 3 years, I've been pretty much by myself, just solitary, right? I was in graduate school. And I did work with people, like I worked with people in the writing center at the university here in town while I was getting my master's. It was like part of the contract I'd signed with them is that I would have to work in the writing center and tutor students and work with them on composition and things like that. But we never got the chance really to gossip. We were too busy in there. But even so, it's like I only worked there 4 hours a week. So, I mean, gossip may have happened, but I was always working with people during those times. So I never really got the chance to do that anyway. Not that I would stoop myself to the level of being the awesome office gossip, right? But yeah, then, for the last year and a half now, I've been teaching college, and it's completely different than the experience from teaching high school, because like teaching college, I never even see my boss. I communicate with her through email, and anybody else that I'm teaching with, I just never see them. We all have different schedules, and I work in my office, and I go and teach my class, and that's it. And I've found a job that I am very agreeable with. I like that quite a lot, just being able to go in and just worry about your own stuff, and very rarely meeting with other people. It's kind of nice, right? But I realize that this is nothing gold can stay, because this is a contract job, and it's up in a couple of weeks, and now I have to actually get a job, and if that means having to go back into the office environment, well, then I guess, so be it. That's going to have to happen, right? And I have been applying for jobs. As I talked about last week, I was on LinkedIn, and which I just have always detested that website. I can't really understand it at all. It's very confusing, and it's full of AI scams. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. And most of the jobs that get recommended to you are, what they call them ghost jobs, right? Just jobs that companies put on LinkedIn just to collect applications, and like that robot in Wall-E, just they task AI with sorting out those applications, putting them into certain buckets to fulfill certain needs at certain times, and everything that pretty much every application that you throw into the pool on LinkedIn is going to wind up at the bottom of the pile. But you just have to be okay with that, right? That's just the one of those compromises that we've made to be able to apply for jobs in like Bora Bora, rather than having to find out about it through some kind of like correspondence, like through snail mail or something, and having to send in our applications and cover letters. And right, we now can find out about these things instantly through LinkedIn, through this gigantic digital network on the internet, and we can apply for these jobs in these faraway lands, and then we can get rejected from them much quicker. And right, that's just the deal we've made, right? And we have to be happy and content with that compromise. So yeah, but yeah, I did spend most of last weekend just doing that, just throwing applications out there, and to just any job that looked like I might fit and into in any place. I really was not discriminatory, and I've talked to Jessica about this, my wife, and she's okay with it. It's like we got to be okay with being prepared to move, if that may be the case, but also just knowing that we're probably not going to move. it's very unlikely that any application I throw out there on LinkedIn is going to be received by anybody. And yeah, sure enough, like this through the week, I've been getting this steady chain of emails rejecting me for every job that I've applied to. And it's an AI reply, and you know that no human being ever saw your application. They just kind of sorted through it, and with a robot, with a computer, with machine learning, I suppose, and just promptly rejected you, right? And you're just hoping that maybe one of them makes it through, but it'll probably not be the job that you really want, that you just chipped away at. So whatever. It's just the game you play. I hate playing this game so much. I hate applying for jobs. It's awful. Right. I did get one response back, and I do have a job interview this week. And funny enough, it's for a job that I actually sent via email to a real person and did not discover the job opening through LinkedIn. Like, I mean, just imagine that, right? You go onto LinkedIn and you tell them specifically, I only want to see jobs that are here in Birmingham, Alabama. And they don't show you the one job that you eventually find on your own that you just be like, I wonder if they're hiring. And you look on their own website, and there's a job posting, and there's an actual human being that you can email your resume to, and you send that in, you do it yourself, and then you get a response back from them a couple days later. So out of the 20 applications that I sent out last weekend, I get one reply back, and it was to the one company that I actually just applied to in person. So I have I'm meeting with them on Zoom on Monday. So there you go. It is. It's just a time-consuming process to find a job. The thing that I hate so much about it is, again, you just go on LinkedIn. You say you only want to see jobs in Birmingham, Alabama, and they show you like the same 5 or 6 jobs over and over again, and they're not in Birmingham, Alabama. They're for these big companies that are nationwide, and they want to hire you to train AI. So. And even though I've got this interview this week, I'm still continuing to look for what's out there, to look on LinkedIn and just see what else is going on in the world. Just go there. LinkedIn had this thing actually where you could get LinkedIn Premium, which promised to show you the jobs that you wouldn't get with the regular LinkedIn, which is like, what is this about? What? I get that you pay recruiters, and I get that you pay headhunters to try and find you, and LinkedIn is no different, but it's also just kind of stupid to me that they want you to pay like $30 extra per month to show you the really good stuff, right? I got the free trial. It was like, okay, so I need a job in a month by the end of the month. If I don't get a job by the end of this month, then I'll shut down LinkedIn Premium without having to pay for it. And, if LinkedIn doesn't give me a job that I am a good fit for, that I can actually interview for, that actually emails me back and shows interest, if they don't do that, then I'll cancel them anyway, because I know they're not worth it. But and so far, they have not been worth it at all. The best that I can see that LinkedIn Premium really does is that if it shows you a job that you're maybe qualified for, it'll suggest via AI ways that you can tweak your resume to, to make yourself look more attractive to the potential employer, which I could just do that anyway. So, right. I know that it'll take extra time, but I mean, whatever, you're going to be spending all that time anyway, because the thing is like when you go to LinkedIn and it says like easily apply, you're not really easily applying for a job. And even more so when you click apply for a job, I mean, it just sends you to the employer's website or their LinkedIn page where you fill out an application, and you would think that you've got your resume there, right? You spent all this time, and I did. I spent like a lot of time last week crafting my resume and updating it, making it sure it showed all of the best experience that I have, the things that I can bring to a job, maybe not just a teaching job, but also doing things in program development and grant writing and these things that I have in my past and that I've done over the years for the nonprofits I've worked for that I feel like I'm qualified to be able to do efficiently now, and with good expertise. But so you've got your resume there, and they still make you go through, like, they make you fill out another resume, right? Like you go in and you have to, everything from your name all the way down to your work experience and 3 bullet points about what you did at your previous jobs and your references, all the stuff that's already on your resume, they make you do it again. So it really takes an average of about 25 minutes to fill out to actually apply for a job, even though you're just kind of, it just is so inefficient the way that it all works. And it's, if you're listening to me right now and you're like, God, I have a job, then that's my intent. Keep that job. Don't leave it. I don't care. If you're unhappy, the grass is not always greener. It sucks over here, right? It's desert. It's dry, and it's, it's awful, right? And you have to pay for your own health insurance. Stay with that job. Do not come to this side of the yard. So, looking at jobs right now, curriculum developer, remote, $75,000 to $90,000 a year. Okay. Yeah, I found this earlier. I saved it. I'm most likely not going to apply for it because it requires training in AI. Yeah, everything is AI now. It's like a few years ago, it was all VR. Now it's AI, right? But yeah, this is a job. It's with the Constructive Dialogue Institute, is a nonprofit dedicated to equipping the next generation of Americans with the skills to communicate and collaborate across lines of distance. And I found this interesting that this was coming up because this is actually a nonprofit that was founded by this social psychologist named Jonathan Haidt, who has been very much in the news in the past few years for writing a couple of books. One of them is The Coddling of the American Mind, about how, the kids are soft now. They're soft, these Gen Z kids. And then the other one was The Anxious Generation. I found it interesting because I have just been reading back through The Anxious Generation. This is a very interesting book, right, about how in 2010, right, when Apple first came out with like the iPhone 4, which was the first smartphone to introduce the front-facing camera. This is when kids' anxiety went up through the roof, right, and their mental health went downward, suicide rates went up, and it was among teens. And, he makes this really good case for the idea that, like, the kids now, Gen Z, and then Gen Alpha, of course, they're not anxious because of all these world events, because of, growing up with, in the recession, and for a lot of them, the first thing that they really witnessed was 9/11 and just this unstable world. A lot of social psychologists and critics have suggested that this is why these kids are so anxious. But what Jonathan Haidt says is like, no, it's not the way that the world has acted on them. It's the way that they act on the world. It's the way that they are constantly, in a feedback loop of taking pictures of themselves and uploading them, getting judged by their behavior and what they do and all that stuff. So, this stuff to me, of course, as a teacher now for like a decade, has always seemed very obvious. I don't know. It's like when I was teaching, there was very little in-person, bullying that was going on among my students. Most of the bullying that was going on was like, I never saw. It was like being done online. because, the kids did not have a chance to go home and just recharge their batteries and be alone. They were constantly just in this feedback loop that was going on from like the morning they woke up to the moment they went to sleep, which was usually right before the moment they woke up, because they were up all night, right, on their phones, right? So anyway, so it looks like this guy Jonathan Haidt has created this what's the name of the company again? This Constructive Dialogue Institute, right? CDI is at a pivotal moment in growth. In 2024, we more than doubled the number of partners that we worked with, and we plan to double our reach again in 2025. Yeah, so it looks like what he's doing here is actually putting some of the things that he talked about in the book, The Anxious Generation, into action. And the idea was that, like, we need to make sure that kids are not getting phones until they're 13, and even when they get the phones, it needs to be an actual enforceable law, like written into legislation, that they do not get a social media account of any kind until they're 16 years old, right? And they need to like let their brains develop naturally before you give them these things, which are just as harmful as any kind of, like crack or anything like that, I suppose. So, it looks like that's what this is. And I would love to work for a company like that. I really would, like developing curriculum to make sure that, I suppose like, adults get more of an education on, how to work with their kids on negotiating, when they get a phone and when they get a social media account, but also educating children, I suppose, and giving them more, curriculum that is, designed more to get them to engage with the world, and as the kids say, right, touch grass. So I suppose so. But, it does require like a lot of, we'll see, the job requires like exceptional writing skills. Like I've got that. Exceptional writing skills, right? Deep content knowledge and dialogue, civic education, conflict resolution, and/or psychology. Yeah, I don't have that at all. I don't have any of that. No, I'm not going to be able to go in there and pretend like deep content knowledge and dialogue. Like I know how to talk. I know how to do that, right? Conflict resolution. I mean, I've broken up fights between kids before, right? But kids very often really don't want to fight, and they just flex and pose to make it look like they want to fight. And really inside what they're really hoping for is just for an adult to get between them. And so like, even though I've broken up a fight before between two students who were much bigger and much more adrenalized than I am, they were just so happy to get for me to get between them, right? So that's my experience with conflict resolution. But I think you probably have to read like a few books or something in order to maybe have like another degree or whatever to do that job. So I will not be applying for it. I will not be spending like another 25 minutes, right? Just, going through that process of having to give them my resume and then like rewrite my resume on their own website and in their own terms. So. Yeah, so it was today, even though I know it's going to be like something like 30 degrees or whatever on Monday, today you would not know that because it was I was out driving, and you get this feeling when you get in the car at like 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to be in this car all day long. I'm going to drive around. I'm going to make some money until I get a job. And just being there, like listening to music and all that. And then by about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, even though you've got that AC like properly going, you just get totally overwhelmed by being out and just constantly getting in and out of the car in this hot world. So Yeah, I came home today, and I haven't done this in a while. Just came home at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and just like, I just put some shorts on and just like laid myself in front of the fan and just took like a long nap there. Tried to be like a little bit productive. I like brought out a book, and I was gonna like actually just try and get some reading done. But yeah, within like seconds, I was just asleep, just like blanketed with my own sweat, right, from the hot day. So. And then I woke up about an hour or so later, and I heard the unmistakable sounds. My wife was in the living room, and I just heard the unmistakable sounds of Jackrabbit Slims. And she was watching Pulp Fiction, and was laying there trying to muster up the energy to get up and go and join her, thinking about how long it had been since I'd seen Pulp Fiction. It's probably been about 8 years. But, when I first saw it, of course, it was one of those movies that I saw like at a good time. I was 17 years old, and just it was absolutely just the perfect time to see that movie, just as a, one of those movies that got me into film, kind of like show me what movies were supposed to really be like, just these exciting, energetic, like anything can happen roller coaster rides. They could really be like that. Right. And yeah, I went in and I sat down with Jessica, and we were watching Pulp Fiction. And, I was thinking tonight, actually, like, as I was thinking about Val Kilmer and like being at the movie gallery and these like late night sessions of just talking about it, in this big empty store, holding my 5 movies in my hand. That was the first time I had seen Pulp Fiction. Actually, it's like I had this was 1999, right? As I said, and I know the movie came out several years before that, but I was young when the movie came out. I would have been 12 years old, I think, and not really interested in quote unquote like adult movies, I suppose, right? But yeah, when I first rented Pulp Fiction. Was in about, I'm going to hazard a guess. It's probably like September or October, maybe of 1998, I think. And, I think the reason I know, or I'm going to say maybe, 98 or so. Yeah. Like, and I think the reason I know this is because when I rented Pulp Fiction, and, this was a couple months before I had started working at the Dollar Theater, I took it home, and I had my like little place and downstairs. We called it the back den. It was this room that butted up against the den proper. And my dad would be in the den watching his movies and on TV. And then I would have my little back den space, right? And the computer was in there, and I had like a couch with a hide-a-bed, and I had taken to like sleeping in there, right? And just with that TV there, that was like a combination TV and VCR. So it was just like, the perfect setup, I suppose. And, you just be up all night long, like talking to your friends on like AOL and watching movies. And, just bringing home Pulp Fiction and just putting it in, and that opening scene where they're in the coffee shop, and it's just like, it's like talking. Is that what like adult movies are? Just people talking, right? And even when they got up, those Tim Roth at the beginning of the movie, and Amanda Plummer, talking for 5 minutes about, robbing banks with cellular phones, and then they stand up and, rob the coffee shop. And it cuts to the surf music. I just wasn't interested for whatever reason. It just didn't grab me. And I was confused because everybody else this was such a ubiquitous movie in culture, and it had been for a very long time. Like my teachers would quote it and talk about it. And, I was just very confused by this movie. Right. And so I did not finish it. I didn't finish it. Right. I took Pulp Fiction back. I think I didn't even bother to rewind it. Right. So that's one of the reasons why I like Movie Gallery. It was like, the Movie Gallery was this Alabama owned chain of video stores. And they, as far as I can recall, they did not charge you if you brought a movie back that was not rewound. So anyway, like Blockbuster did. So and then a few months go by, I get my job at the Dollar Theater, and I'm there one night, the store's closed. I'm talking with Christy, And I go ahead and decide to give, Pulp Fiction a second try. And take it home, and just the movie starts, and it's Tim Roth and Amanda Plummer, and they're sitting there at the coffee shop, and I suddenly start understanding what they're talking about, right? Robbing a bank with a cellular phone, and talking about there's something that's going on under the surface there, like just this underlying absurdity of fight or flight, of the fact that criminals, even though they have guns and they're scary people, are just really just people too. They have to stop and have coffee every once in a while, and they have to talk about their plans, and they double talk each other, and they undermine each other, and they also have very close special relationships with each other, in the way that Tim Roth and Amanda Plummer at the beginning of that movie are in a loving relationship, right? And so suddenly the movie just gets to me, and that movie is like, I think, the first time I had ever just sat there and been absolutely could not get up, felt glued to my seat, and having these intense, like, physical reactions while I was watching that movie there in the back den of my parents' house in, like, 1999. And I don't know what it was, but it's like, just this, and I was thinking about it tonight, like, what happened there that I didn't get a movie, and then like 6 months later I couldn't take my eyes off it, that everything was just suddenly making sense to me. And I think like what it probably was going into the working world. I think it was the job. I honestly think it was. And I'm not saying that suddenly I can like relate to these two people who like everything is driven by money for them or love or whatever. But it was just, I think, going into the world and suddenly having like a little bit of a stake in it, I suppose. And, interacting with people in ways that didn't revolve around school or church or just family. But, these finding out that like work is, in life in general is all about negotiating and politics and things like that. And I think like that's what was going on. I think this is probably about like, suddenly just everything with that movie stuck for me. Right. I think that must have been like, what it was all about, I guess, but yeah. And just, that was a movie that I do remember just like the first time just having a true, just over the top reaction. I think it was like just during the the scene, the adrenaline shot scene, right, where Vincent Vega buys this hot dose of heroin that's good for him, right? He's really used to it, but he leaves it in his coat, and it's accidentally found by his date, Mia Wallace, right, Uma Thurman, who is the mob boss's wife, right? So yeah, and just like this whole scene, just like I was just on like inching, like bunching up in my seat, right?
All right, what I need is a big fat magic marker. You got it? What? A magic marker. A felt pen. A fucking black magic marker. Come on, man, hurry up.
The way they're quibbling and saying these little terms, like I need a magic marker, right? Talking like grade school kids or something.
All right, kids, hurry up, man. Okay, hurry up.
Here, I'll tell you what to do.
No, man. I ain't giving you're gonna give it a shot.
No, you're gonna give it a shot.
I ain't giving her the shot.
I never done this before.
I ain't never done it before either, all right? I ain't starting now.
Look, you brought her here, and that means that you're gonna give her the shot. The day that I bring an OD and bitch to your house, then I give her the shot. Give her the shot.
Give it to me.
Here.
Give me that. All right, tell me what to do.
Okay, you're giving her an injection of adrenaline straight to her heart, but she's got a breastplate. You gotta pierce through that. So what you gotta do is you gotta bring the needle down in a stabbing motion.
I gotta stab her 3 times?
No, you don't gotta fucking stab her 3 times. You gotta stab her once, but it's gotta be hard enough to get through her breastplate into her heart, all right? And then when
Eric Stoltz there, you gotta bring it down in a stabbing motion.
What happened?
I'm kind of curious about that myself.
This ain't no fucking joke, man. Am I gonna kill her?
No, she's supposed to come out of it like that. It's...
All right, count to 3.
All right.
Ready? 1.
And yeah, just this moment where you don't know what you're about to see. I mean, that's what got me. What am I about to see happen here? Oh, God.
3!
Just that sound effect, man. And, you know, it was just one of those things where, like, I don't know about you. I just was not attentive enough of film at the time to really figure out that that's what movies were really supposed to do, was to just, like, make you not know and just do interesting new things. I think was the thing about Pulp Fiction, right? So yeah, that was, you know, my wife was watching it tonight, and of course, you know, when I got really into that movie, like falling very hard for Pulp Fiction, you know, one of these movies that, you know, I watched. I remember we had a field trip. I don't remember where we went on the field trip, but you know, most field trips usually ended up with going to the mall to eat in the food court. We parked the big yellow bus, you know, the cringe yellow bus, out there in the Parisians parking lot, and we would go to the food court, and then of course we could go. Everybody went down to Spencer's, and I would go up to the Suncoast, which, by the way, a couple months later would end up being my second job. I would work at the Suncoast for a while, yeah, getting Pulp Fiction on videotape on the field trip, and you know, bringing it home and just watching it just all the time, right? And then, of course, as I said, you know, I had a computer, so I was on there and, you know, adopting all of the fan theories about the film, you know, like what's going on with that briefcase, what's in the briefcase, right? You're not really supposed to know, but everybody's, of course, saying, like, well, notice how Marcellus Wallace has the Band-Aid on his neck. That's where the devil sucked out his soul and he put it in the briefcase. Right. And that's what they're trying to retrieve, is this briefcase that has Marcellus Wallace's soul. I think that's like what everybody generally agrees is in the briefcase. I don't know if the director, Quentin Tarantino, has ever said that. I don't think he will. I mean, you're not supposed to know. It's just a MacGuffin. That's the movie Pulp Fiction plays around with movie tropes. And the classic movie trope is the MacGuffin, the thing that everybody wants. And so the briefcase is just this thing that's ultimately designed to, you know, get the two hitmen, you know, John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson, from one place to another. It's the one thing that's like motivating them to get through the day. So that's all it is. It's just a MacGuffin, but everybody says it's Marcellus Wallace's soul. So yeah. And I think just like, you know, Pulp Fiction is one of those movies that you just, you know, it's been out now. It's 31 years ago, I think that movie came out, right? And has rightly stood up as, I think, like one of the great films of all time, just for the mere reason that it just reinvented the way that I think we looked at movies. And I think that that's what was going on when I discovered the movie. For the first time, I didn't really know what was like I was supposed to take from this, because movies generally did not have this kind of talk to violence that we've now become so used to. But you know, at the time I just wasn't, and I don't think a lot of us were really looking for that kind of thing, right? But you know, sitting down with my wife tonight, what was really fascinating is just getting to the point where you take a movie for granted, that you know, this movie that at one point meant so much for you, to you, but you are now just at a point where it's just a movie that's on. You can still watch it. You can still really enjoy it and laugh at it and have a good time watching it, but you feel like you've figured everything out about it. And I was feeling this way tonight until my wife said something very interesting. And as I said a few weeks ago, my wife is like a movie genius. She really does pick things out that I've never noticed before. And not saying that like I'm the one who's supposed to notice everything. Like, I'm not that. But I do get to this point where I become blind to really interpreting movies and thinking more about them. After I've seen them a number of times, I just assume. And I was talking about this recently with Mulholland Drive, a movie that I have seen so many times now and just feel like I've figured everything out about it. But every time I watch that movie, I inevitably notice something new. And I'm like that with like that movie Eyes Wide Shut also. But yeah, Pulp Fiction is one of these movies like, yeah, it's Marcellus Wallace's soul, whatever, and you just kind of go home and don't think about it. But yeah, my wife said something interesting tonight, and I think that this is, you know, something I have never considered before, and I've never heard anybody say this before, give this theory. And I don't even really think you can call it a theory. I think it's very intentional. by the filmmakers. But there is this, you know, the movie opens with, after the robbery scene in the coffee shop, it's a flashback. We don't know it's a flashback, but it is. Of the two hitmen who work for the gangster Marcellus Wallace. You know, we got Jules and Vincent, played by Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta, respectively. And they're on their way to retrieve the briefcase and to kill the guys who have taken it. And on the way, they're obviously having like a lot of conversations. These conversations have just become venerated. They're just like a natural part of pop culture history. We don't even think about them anymore as having to like just jog our memories. Like what was that? What movie was that in again? That Burger King Royale with cheese conversation. We don't even think about it anymore, right? But the scene turns when they begin talking about this low-level gangster named Tony Rocky Horror, who Marcellus Wallace threw out of a window down several stories into the garden, ostensibly because he had given Mia Wallace, you know, his wife, a foot massage, right? And so they're arguing back and forth about like if that's really worth it. Is it really worth, like, you know, taking away a guy's ability to walk and talk? And, you know, he's got a speech impediment, right? Because, you know, because he was thrown out the window. Because, you know, just for giving somebody's wife a foot massage. And they talk about it and they argue about it, right? And so, yeah, later on, you know, Jules, John Travolta is not really sure that the whole story really adds up. Like, why would you overreact like that? And he has a chance to clear the air, to clear it up, to actually clear the gossip up, right? With Mia Wallace, Uma Thurman, when he takes her out on a date. And so they're sitting here, and I'm just going to play like this whole scene, and there's something really interesting that happens here. And this scene is just by way of like setting up what the theory that my wife put out there tonight, and that I agree with, I think, right?
Don't you just love it when you come back from the bathroom to find your food waiting for you?
We're lucky we got anything at all. I don't think Buddy Holly's much of a waiter. Maybe we should have sat in Marilyn Monroe section.
Would you like some coffee? Which one? There's two Monroes.
No, there's not. That is Marilyn Monroe. That is Mamie Van Doren. And I don't see Jenny Mansfield, so she must have a night off or something.
Pretty smart.
Yeah, I got my moments.
So do you think of something to say?
Actually, I did. However, you seem like a really nice person, and I don't want to offend you.
Ooh. This doesn't sound like the usual mindless, boring, getting to know you chit-chat. This sounds like you actually have something to say.
Well, I do. But you have to promise not to be offended.
No. You can't promise something like that. I have no idea what you're going to ask me. So you can go ahead and ask me what you're going to ask me. And my natural response could be to get offended. Then through no fault of my own, I would have broken my promise.
Let's just forget it.
That's an impossibility. Trying to forget anything as intriguing as this would be an exercise in futility.
Is that a fact?
And besides, isn't it more exciting when you don't have permission?
All right. Well, here goes. What did you think about what happened to Antoine?
Who's Antoine?
Tony Rocky Horror. You know him.
He fell out of a window.
Well, that is one way to say it. Another way to say it would be that he was thrown out. Another way would be he was thrown out by Marcellus. And yet even another way is to say he was thrown out of a window by Marcellus because of you.
Is that a fact?
No, it's not a fact. It's just what I heard.
Who told you?
They.
They talk a lot, don't they?
They certainly do.
Don't be shy, Vincent. What else did they say?
Well, I'm not shy.
Did it involve the F word?
No. They just said that Antoine had given you a foot massage.
And?
And nothing. That's it.
You heard Marcellus threw Tony Rocky Horror out a 4-story window for giving me a foot massage? Can you believe that?
Well, I mean, at the time I was told it sounded reasonable.
Marcellus throwing Tony out of a 4-story window or massaging my feet seem reasonable?
No, it seemed excessive, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. I mean, I understand that Marcellus is very, very protective of you.
A husband being protective of his wife is one thing. A husband almost killing another man for touching his wife's feet is something else.
But did it happen?
Only thing Antoine ever touched of mine was my hand when he shook it. At my wedding.
Really?
So, I realized just now I really didn't have to give you like that whole backstory because they just told it there, you know. But it's the whole thing of like, you know, why did Marcellus throw Tony Rocky Horror right out of the window? And she says, no, it's complete BS, right? He, you know, the only time he touched anything was when I shook it. And so this thing with the handshake is interesting, right? Because afterwards, as you know, they go back to Mia Wallace's place and she overdoses and they go through this horrific episode where Travolta has to revive her, right? With the adrenaline. And then they get back, right? Travolta drives Mia Wallace back to her house and they're standing there in the courtyard. And they have this moment here.
Mia. What's your thoughts on how to handle this?
What's yours?
Well, I'm of the opinion that if Marcellus lived his whole life, he don't need to know nothing about this incident.
If Marcellus knew about this incident, I'd be in as much trouble as you.
I seriously doubt that.
I can keep a secret if you can.
Shake on it.
And there it is, right? So, you know, I don't know. You're either telling me right now, like, Mike, that's obvious. Like, I've known this for 30 years, right? Or you're saying, oh my God, right? So what just happened there between them was a recreation of what she says that she did, right? With Tony Rocky Horror, where it's like they shook hands and agreed not to talk about something, right? So now everything that she has said, that she said it didn't really happen, and all of that's called into question again, which also makes you question a lot of things that happened before that she's also said and that they've said. And it just becomes this now new way to watch a movie. And that's just as I've said before, just like how you know a movie's great, right? Is like you just watch it and you just catch one little thing and it just kind of like upsets the whole thing. Like what? No. And you know, Jessica said that and I was suddenly just watching the movie in a completely new way. You know, later on when the guy is hiding in the bathroom, right? That guy who looks like Jerry Seinfeld, who I know that they've, you know, now you can't unsee it, right? He's holding that gigantic hand cannon and he barges out of the bathroom and tries to kill them. You know, that mirrors a scene that happens earlier in the movie that in chronology actually happens later in the story when John Travolta's in the bathroom and he walks out and Bruce Willis is standing there holding the gun at him and he fires on him and kills him. Right? Makes you think like that's a mirror, those two scenes mirror each other, and Travolta writes off Samuel L. Jackson's like suggestion that was divine intervention, that the guy came out of the bathroom and fired on them that many times and did not manage to hit them once. He says it's divine intervention, and you know, Vincent Vega's like, no, it's not divine intervention. So he misses that sign. He misses that signal, and he stays in the life. And then the next day, chronologically in the story, he's killed in the same exact fashion, only this time he's coming out of the bathroom, right? I think I have thought about that before, but not in the context of noticing that, how those two scenes are more or less the same, right? So, you know, it's one of these things. It's where you get really, you know, comfortable in your own skin, you know, watching this movie that you know and that you've just taken for granted for so long, and then you just like suddenly something just shakes it out of you, right? It's a fun feeling, but it's also kind of unsettling because it's like, you know, my God, man. So I'll leave you with that tonight. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Midnight Citizen Show tonight. And we'll go out. We'll have one more drink to Val Kilmer, I suppose. Yeah. Who was never in a Tarantino movie. But just the same. I want to remind you that you can catch me up. Everything that I do is over there on the Substack over at mikesbonfire.substack.com. I'm also on every podcast platform I think you can probably imagine, on Spotify, Apple Music, whatever. If you got a podcatcher, I guess I'm there. Throw your net out. I'll come in some weird mangled form, I suppose. Also over there, I post weekly also the show over at the Overnightscape Underground on onsug.com, where you can discover my show as well as the shows of all these other great people who are doing shows that are pretty much like mine, including, of course, the Overnightscape, the original show that started it all, hosted by Frank Edward Nora up there in Nutley, New Jersey. So, and yeah, what else? Do I have anything else tonight? I don't think so. As I said, I am thinking about the great rebranding. I've taken some notes this week on it. I think that I am probably going to do 300 episodes of the Midnight Citizen Show and then end it. And then come back the next week with pretty much the same show, just like a bit of a different name. Inc. Right? And, yeah, pretty much the same show. I don't think I'm even going to change up the format or anything like that. I don't think I'm doing that. So anyway, you know. But yeah, you can definitely just stay tuned for that. Yeah, if you like the name and you like the show, I mean, you know, then they'll all still be up there. I'm not taking the archive down or anything like that. But I'm going to be working on in the coming weeks just getting everything on the Substack, like my archive, the last 14 years of shows that I've done of the Midnight Citizen Show. Just having all of that up there, easy to access. But you don't have to wait for that. You can go into archive.org and just search for the Midnight Citizen, and all the shows are there. I just kind of want to consolidate everything into you being able to find it in one place. So yeah, I want to do that. Okay. Anyway. All right. Well, until next time, which will be next Saturday. Keep your eyes open.